There's a part of manifestation that often gets overlooked because in the process, we're so heavily invested on whatever it is that we asked for. We create the vision board, visualize the relationship, imagine the career, set the financial goal, repeat the affirmations, ask the universe for the opportunity, and then we wait for the external evidence that whatever it is that we asked for is finally making its way to us. But sometimes there is something happening underneath the desire that we unfortunately haven't examined yet. You may consciously want something very badly, while another part of you has learned to associate that very same thing with danger, responsibility, even risk or loss or rejection. And unfortunately, when that happens, the problem isn't necessarily that you don't want the outcome, because it's obvious that you want the outcome. You wouldn't have asked for it. The problem may be that the part of you doesn't yet feel safe with what the outcome would require you to experience. So today what I want to do is I want to explore why you may not be receiving whatever it is that you've asked for, particularly when you know you're doing everything right. So we're going to talk about the hidden beliefs, fear of change, why success and abundance can actually make you feel uncomfortable, and why visibility can activate fear. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Elizabeth Rori, spiritual coach and a manifestation mentor. Before we get back to the video, I want to quickly introduce Native Pet. This is a company I genuinely use and truly believe in. Native Pet creates dog supplements designed to support everyday health using whole food, high quality ingredients. Their formulas are developed with veterinary nutrition expertise, and they're committed to keeping their products clean without unnecessary fillers or artificial ingredients. So this is a dream come true to me. I have two Husky Wolf hybrids. I actually make their food at home. So finding a supplement company whose philosophy aligns with how I care for my babies has been incredibly rewarding. My boys take Native Pets daily supplements, including the daily, which is a daily vitamin, and the hip and joint advanced care. I've also just started them both on the 12-in-1 benefit. It's a senior vitamin, and it's been incredibly helpful with their everyday routines. We're very active. My boys are 9 and almost 11, so keeping them healthy is really important to me. If you're like myself, a crazy pet parent, I absolutely wholeheartedly recommend checking out Native Pet. Link below for a 20% discount. So let's begin with something very simple. You have a conscious mind that can make decisions and articulate goals. You can say, I want a loving relationship. I want financial abundance. I want to be successful, or I want to be visible. I want to start my own business, or maybe even like, I want to leave this relationship. I want to end this situation. But underneath those conscious desires are years and years of learning about what those things actually mean. So maybe you learn that relationships are unstable, or you grew up hearing that money was really difficult to obtain. Maybe you even associate success with exhaustion. Maybe being visible meant to be criticized or to judged, or maybe you receiving more responsibility was associated with stress. So you can consciously want the outcome while still carrying beliefs that make the outcome feel like threatening or unrealistic to you. This is why simply asking, what do I want, isn't always enough. As much as this revealing question is, what do I want? You should probably dive deeper. What do I believe this outcome would mean about me and my current life? Asking this question is exactly where the hidden beliefs will begin to appear. Hidden beliefs are often not obvious at all. So when I speak about limiting beliefs, people often imagine something very obvious, such as, I'm not good enough. Unfortunately, many limiting beliefs are much less obvious. So let's say somebody might want financial abundance, but underneath that desire, they may believe that wealthy people are greedy, or have money only creates conflict, or that money changes who you are as a person, or even that financial success means that all you're doing is working consistently. They may never consciously think, I don't want to be wealthy. Instead, they may have repeatedly procrastinated when it comes to their financial decisions, or they don't even look at their bank statements or their credit card statements, or they even undercharge for their own work, or they spend impulsively when they receive the money. They can't keep it, or become uncomfortable when their income increases. So they don't feel comfortable with money, but they want more financial abundance. The behavior can look irrational until you understand the meaning attached to money. So the same thing happens with love, with success. So let's talk about love. Someone might desperately want to be in a healthy relationship while carrying the belief that intimacy means losing their independence, or being vulnerable means to be rejected, or being deeply loved means eventually having something to lose. This one, I actually work with a lot of people on this. I too went through this. I've experienced tragic deaths in my very close relationships. And I started to push people away, or I was a little bit afraid to get into another relationship because I've been with 3 who have passed away. Again, they may consciously say, I want love, but their learned expectations may cause them to withdraw when somebody actually becomes vulnerable with them or emotionally available. People choose to interpret love very differently. So defining on what love means to you is your first step, especially if that's what you're going for. If you want love, if you want a soulmate, a partner, you must define what love means to you. This is why I want you to stop looking at only what it is that you say that you want, but look at the patterns that you create in your life, because your patterns and your behavior are going to tell you something. Your behavior can reveal beliefs that your conscious mind hasn't fully examined yet. This is a concept that is very, very important to understand, is that the brain is consistently trying to predict what comes next. The brain wants to be so efficient. Not only does it want to keep us alive and protect us, but it always wants to be efficient, and it's always going to take those shortcuts. So predictability helps your brain navigate the world with efficiency. If you've experienced the same pattern repeatedly over and over again, what has happened is your brain has become very good at anticipating it. Remember, your brain only has what it remembers, what it's experienced. So every single time it comes with that same situation, it's going to automatically revert back to the same experience it's had in the past. It's all that it has to go off of. So that can be useful when you're learning a skill or navigating a familiar environment. But it also could be very limiting when our familiar pattern is not what we actually want anymore. So imagine someone who has spent years in a chaotic relationship, and now they consciously want a peaceful, healthy, stable, emotional, secure relationship. When they meet someone who communicates consistently, respects their boundaries, and does not create an emotional chaos, what happens here is, instead of thinking, oh, this is so wonderful, they experience uncertainty. They may wonder why they don't feel the same intensity. They know exactly what they asked for. They're just not feeling what they thought that they would feel. They may interpret calmness as a lack of chemistry, or if they may associate the lack of communication as avoidance, or that you're not good enough for this person. They may even become quite suspicious about behavior if it's something that they're not used to. So this does not mean that they're consciously choosing dysfunction. This does not mean this at all. It means that their previous experiences may have taught their brain, right, that intensity is familiar and calm is unfamiliar. Your brain is always going to go back to what is safe, what is familiar. So in this situation, being dysfunctional is comfortable, is familiar. Something feeling unfamiliar does not automatically mean that it's wrong. Remember, your brain just hasn't experienced it yet. So this brings me to one of the most biggest reasons people struggle to create lasting change. Because change will introduce uncertainty, and people are very uncomfortable with change. So even positive change, honestly. So you might think, if I finally get what I want, I'll be happy. But your brain does not only ask that, it asks, is this desirable? It's also had to deal with something like this, okay? We've put our brains through a lot over a short period of time. Your brains are also dealing with, what happens next? What will be expected of me? What will I have to change? Who will I become? What will other people think of me? What happens if I succeed and then I fail? Or what happens if I don't succeed at all? What happens if I get everything I want and discover that my life hasn't changed? Or what if I receive what I want and I'm still not happy? These questions often operate underneath your conscious awareness. So it's all in your subconscious mind, Remember, your subconscious mind plays a role in who you are, the behaviors, what you do, how you act, everything, your memories, your habits. That's your subconscious mind. We are consistently controlled from our subconscious mind. So sometimes these fears that you're feeling are not really the fear of the outcome, it's the fear of the consequences from the outcome. So let's look at it like this. Success can mean greater responsibility, and visibility means maybe judgment or criticism. Love can mean very much to be more vulnerable, and abundance means that you are learning to manage more. Leaving an unhealthy relationship means that you're spending more time alone. Building a business means a lot of uncertainty, and becoming healthier means that you're letting go of behaviors that you've grasped onto for a really long time out of comfort. So when you're asking for change, you're also asking yourself to adapt to change. You are never going to be fully okay with change unless you give yourself permission to adapt to change. That is why the inner work is so important. It absolutely matters. We spoke about love and we spoke about money, but let's talk about why success feels unsafe for many people. So imagine a person who has spent their entire life identifying as somebody who struggles. So they're comfortable identifying as the underdog. They know how to survive. They know how to work really hard. They even know how to overcome all these obstacles that have put in their path. And then suddenly things start to be going really, really well. They receive an opportunity and then the business starts to grow. Their income increases and people start to pay attention to them, start to get more visibility. And instead of feeling only excitement, they experience a bundle of anxiety. Why is this? Well, let's talk about what happens first. They start to procrastinate. They start to become a perfectionist, or they start to create unnecessary problems for themselves. Assumptions only create hell. So creating an assumption is only going to create your own internal hell. These people may even avoid to make big decisions. And they may even unconsciously create circumstances that bring them back to what feels familiar. This does not mean that they have a little subconscious voice intentionally sabotaging them. That's not what this means. A better way to understand this is that your established beliefs, habits, expectations, and emotional responses are no longer matching the new circumstances. Their identity has caught up to their environment, and there's a mismatch that's now creating a lot of discomfort. This is why it's so important to identify these limiting beliefs, understand where they came from, and then replace them with new beliefs. Now, there's another layer here that I think is so fascinating. Sometimes we don't realize how much our identity is built around our own problems. How many of you know somebody or are somebody who consistently complains about everything? If so, these people or yourself has created a habit for yourself to complain about everything. So you're creating an identity of who you are around your problems. Maybe you're the person who everyone calls when they need rescuing. Or maybe you're the person who is always struggling financially. Maybe you're even the person who never gets chosen. Maybe you're the person who is always trying to prove yourself. Okay. Or maybe you're the person who always has been, overlooked. These identities become surprisingly powerful when they organize how you understand yourself. Now imagine all those problems I just mentioned disappear. Who are you without it? What story is it you're going to be telling? If you're no longer struggling, who are you? If you're no longer having to prove yourself, who are you? If you no longer have to chase someone for love, who are you? And if you no longer want to be the person that everybody depends on, what do you do with yourself? This is one reason transformation can and will genuinely create an identity shift. You are not simply adding something new to your life. You are releasing an old identity that you've been very familiar with for years. So the same principles apply to relationships. So if your past experience taught you that love is unpredictable, you may become very sensitive to signs that somebody is possibly pulling away. So if you learned that you needed to earn affection, you may overgive. Now, this happens all the time. You hear people saying, I'm giving more than I'm receiving. Okay, that is not your partner's problem. That is everything to do with you and your beliefs. So if you learn that your needs create conflict, you may suppress them. And if you learn that vulnerability may lead to, I don't know, rejection or fear of failure, or somebody's going to keep distances, you may actually start distancing yourself to avoid intimacy. Here is the contradiction. You want to be loved so deeply, but receiving love requires you to be seen. Being seen requires you to be vulnerable. And vulnerability will create uncertainty. And that uncertainty right there will activate your old pattern responses. So sometimes the challenge isn't attracting love at all. It's allowing yourself to participate in a healthy relationship without reverting back to your old problems that were built in unhealthy relationships. Now let's go right into abundance, because this is particularly very important when it comes to the manifestation culture, okay? A lot of people are gonna say, I want more money. Lovely. I once said that too. I still say it. People often say, I want money, but the relationship with money is not determined by how much that you want. You may learn that money is hard to come by, or it disappears very quickly, or wealthy people are hard to trust. I don't know, maybe even learn that talking about money is very uncomfortable. If you were raised in a household where you never spoke about money, this is probably a belief that you've been holding on to since childhood. Maybe you've experienced financial instability and you've developed this fear of losing money again. These experiences will influence your financial behaviors moving forward. You might avoid looking at your bank accounts, right? You may avoid looking at your bank statements only because it's going to create anxiety or fear. You may spend impulsively because having money feels temporary. It's like you get a whole bunch, then you spend it all at once. You might undercharge for your services because money feels uncomfortable, or that you don't feel worthy of receiving the money for the services that you're providing. You may avoid investing because you are afraid to make the wrong financial decisions. Again, none of this means that your subconscious mind is blocking you from a cosmic manifestation. What it means is that you've learned relationships with money can influence your behavior around money. And behaviors matter. Because if you want a different financial reality, you just don't need a different emotional relationship with money. What you need to do is change your beliefs. You need the skills, the behavior, the decisions, and the knowledge necessary to manage that new reality. Manifestation does not replace financial literacy. Spirituality does not replace action. And positive thinking does definitely not replace learning how something actually works. So this next one is very close to home for me, because this was something I had to overcome before I allow myself to get back on social media, back on YouTube, and really spread my message to the collective. Kind of my example, okay? You want to grow in your own business, and I want people to see my work, and I want to be successful online, but that also means with becoming visible and absorbing other people's opinions of me. They may criticize you. They will misunderstand you. They'll disagree with you, or possibly even judge you. And also, some can admire you, and others learn to notice you. But what happens is, over time, I've learned that being noticed can be dangerous or embarrassing or associated with some type of judgment or criticism. And it caused me a lot of discomfort. So that's why when people say they want success, while avoiding the very action that'll increase their visibility. I said I wanted to be a coach, I wanted to be online, I wanted to be a YouTuber, but I was so afraid to be visible that I put it off for a long time. And then I started, and then I actually stopped for 6 or 7 months. So if you go back, you're gonna see my videos have started and stopped twice. It was all because of my fear of being visible. So what we do is we tend to procrastinate, right? We tend to maybe change our website instead of launching it, or we edit content instead of publishing it. I know that I waited until the perfect time. There is no such thing as the perfect time. You start now. I would always tell myself, I'm not ready. I still have to do all this preparing to do. Well, that's actually a form of protecting myself from being seen or being judged. My conscious goal was to be visible, but I had these embedded beliefs that visibility is really frightening. So it kept me invisible. So this was an internal conflict that I was having. And then I had to overcome before I allow myself to get back here and do what I'm doing at this moment. So, what does this phrase, the subconscious is protecting you, actually mean? So, this phrase is often talked about in the personal growth industry, but I want to explain it as accurate as I possibly can. Your subconscious is not a little person inside your brain making decisions for you. Your subconscious mind is a broad, non technical term often used to describe the mental processes that often happen outside of your conscious mind. So these processes include the associations, automatic behaviors, memories, emotional responses, and other forms of processing that influence your behavior without deliberate conscious thought. As I've spoken many times, our subconscious mind is truly who we are, how we respond, how we act, where we store our memories, and how we have our automatic behaviors and emotional responses. So these are automatic responses developed when they were useful. If your brain learned that a particular situation was associated with danger or rejection or embarrassment or even some sort of pain, it may become way more alert to the similar situations in the future. Remember, it only has the past experiences to go off on. So it's always going to revert back to familiarity, comfort zone, safety zone. This is a protective function. But here is the major problem that we all run into. A response that was useful in one environment is not necessarily useful forever. Avoiding conflict may have protected you in one relationship, but now it might prevent you from having a healthy relationship moving forward. Staying emotionally distant may have protected you in the past, but now it's actually causing a lot of rejection or actually fear of intimacy. Avoiding financial risk may have prevented you from a loss in the past, but now it may prevent you from reasonable investments or even financial growth. So staying small in the past may have saved you from criticism, okay? This is mine right here. But now it was going to prevent you from being seen. The brain does not automatically know that the environment has changed. It only learns through past experiences. And that means you have the ability to teach it something different. You don't have to fight yourself. So this is where I want to shift the way you think about self-sabotage. So instead of thinking, why am I sabotaging myself? I want you to try asking, what is this behavior trying to protect me from? If you're procrastinating, is a task associated with some sort of fear or failure? If you're avoiding love, intimacy, is it because of vulnerability is associated with rejection? If you find yourself afraid to succeed, is it because success is associated with more responsibility or even failure? If you're afraid to become visible, is visibility associated with criticism and judgment? If you're struggling to receive, is receiving associated with debt, obligation, or maybe even disappointment? So understanding to answer these questions the way that you feel will really help you identify what hidden beliefs that you're storing, what needs to be changed. The behavior may be creating a short-term sense of safety then, while creating a long-term problem. And once you understand what that behavior is accomplishing for you, you begin replacing it with a healthier strategy. That's why identifying what these beliefs are, where they stem from, and then replacing them with new ones is so important. So you may be sitting there going, great, Elizabeth, we get it. It's the subconscious mind, it's the conscious mind. It's these beliefs, it's these patterns that we've created. So how do I change it? The first step is awareness. You have to identify the conflict between what you consciously want and what you are consistently repeating. So look at the goal, okay? Then look at your behavior. You're gonna have to become very honest with yourself. If you say you want a relationship, but you're consistently choosing unemotional, unavailable people, that's information. If you say you want financial abundance, but you're consistently avoiding your finances, that's information. If you say you want visibility, but you are often hiding your work, that's information. Maybe you say you want peace, but you're consistently recreating chaos. That is information. Do not, I beg of you, do not use this gathered information to shame or criticize yourself, ever. We are becoming aware so we can change. Use it to understand yourself. Once you understand what that is, ask, what would I have to believe about myself for this behavior to make sense? And that's where the hidden beliefs often appear. Once you've identified what these beliefs are, the next step is to create new evidence. So once you've identified your own beliefs, okay, you don't have to force yourself into believing the opposite extreme. That's not how it's going to work. Instead, begin by creating small experiences that challenge your old beliefs. So if you believe you can't trust anyone, start keeping a small promise to yourself. When you start keeping promises to yourself, you're actually teaching the nervous system that it can trust you. If you believe you can't handle success, practice taking on tiny responsibilities. If you believe you're not worthy of a healthy, loving relationship, practice communicating your needs instead of abandoning them. If you believe visibility is dangerous, gradually expose yourself to being seen rather than waiting for the moment to be the perfect time. So that's what I did. I started taking baby steps, and then eventually over time I was like, oh, okay, I got this. Like, it didn't even faze me, and it doesn't even faze me anymore. Everyone's going to have their own beliefs. I don't take anything personal, good or bad. So honestly, it doesn't bother me at all. My purpose here is to spread this message to all of you. And if I'm doing that, my promise to myself is fulfilled. So making these small little steps are going to change what's been practical in the past. And this is how psychology can change how we believe. You're not simply thinking differently. You're behaving differently. You're observing different things and teaching yourself different patterns, and that different responses is possible. Now that I've loaded your brains with all that information, we can now get back to the spiritual framework. So how does manifestation play in all of this? When I talk about manifestation, I don't believe the answer is simply to repeat, I am a match, I'm a match, I'm a match, while ignoring everything that is happening internally. I believe manifestation comes from a much more powerful place, and a much more powerful when we understand who we are, when we understand the person behind the desire. So understanding who you are and why you are asking for the things that you're asking for is incredibly important in the manifestation process. Your desires tell you what you want to experience. Your self-concept will tell you what you currently believe about yourself in relation to the experiences you're having right now. Your beliefs influence your expectations. Your expectations influence your perception. Your perception influences your behavior, and your behavior influences the trajectory of your life. So this does not mean that you control the universe at all, because that is not true whatsoever. It doesn't mean that every event is your fault. And it absolutely does not mean that you can think your way out of circumstances that require practical action. Remember, manifestation doesn't mean you don't have to do anything, take action. That's not true. It means that if you want your external life to change, it's worth examining your internal patterns first, because your internal patterns is what influences the way you participate in life. From a spiritual perspective, more than becoming just a match. You're not pretending, and you're not forcing, and you are absolutely not bypassing your emotions. You are becoming intentionally a match with the reality that you are trying to create. So the next time you find yourself saying, why isn't my manifestation here yet? I want you to pause, because assuming that something is wrong with your vibration is only going to create your own hell. Instead, look inward. Ask yourself these questions. What do I believe about me How do I see myself? What is my self concept? What do I believe about the thing that I'm asking for? What would it change for me when I receive it? What am I afraid to lose if I receive it? What responsibilities come with this manifestation? What parts of my current identity will I have to release? What would I have to believe about myself to feel comfortable in this type of situation? And what behaviors am I repeating that is keeping me connected to my old self? Because sometimes the most important work isn't convincing the universe to give you something. Sometimes the work is understanding why a part of you is still organized around the life you're trying to leave. When you identify that pattern, you have something incredibly valuable: awareness. Awareness gives you the ability to choose, the ability to change your mind and your beliefs. You can develop new skills and regulate your responses and reactions and create new opportunities and experiences. You could practice receiving, you could practice being visible, and then you could do things like this. Go on YouTube, spread your message. You can learn how to handle stress and success. And you could develop a healthier relationship with love, money, responsibility, and most importantly, change. Slowly but surely, over time, your unfamiliar tends to feel much more normal. And that internal work you've been doing, it is going to manifest into all of your dreams coming true. Everything you wrote down, everything you asked the universe will start to appear in your life. And it starts by understanding yourself. Because the goal isn't simply to receive something that you've asked for. The goal is to become capable of living it. It is to become capable of receiving it, of having it. And sometimes the biggest block between you and the life that you're asking for isn't that you don't want it badly enough. It may be that some part of you has never learned that it feels safe, possible, or even normal for you. And that's where the work begins, from the inside out. Always. Thank you so much for being here. If this video resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share. But also, if you were a little bit confused or lost in this video, I really suggest that you go back to my previous videos and watch them and learn, because a lot of the information I taught in those videos come out in this video. Thank you so much for being here. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys endlessly. Thank you for seeing me. I appreciate you so much. All the love.